May 26, 1960, New York, the UN Security Council, the height of the Cold War. American diplomat Henry Cabot Lodge is about to perform an act that will go down in history as the moment of the greatest humiliation for the U.S. intelligence services. Right under the gaze of television cameras, he places a massive wooden Great Seal of the United States on the podium. Lodge takes a pair of tweezers and points to a tiny, barely noticeable hole under the eagle's beak. Here it is, he tells the world. This is how the Soviets have been listening to us for 7 years. The room falls silent. But the real panic wasn't here. It was in the CIA laboratories. The engineers who broke open this seal were horrified. Inside, there were no batteries, no wires, no vacuum tubes. It was a piece of metal that, by all laws of physics at the time, should have been silent. But it spoke. This is the story of a device that was ahead of its time. But before we look inside the wood, we must look into the soul of the man who created it. Because his fate is more terrifying than any spy novel. His name was Lev Theremin. In the 1920s, this Russian inventor was a global superstar. He lived in New York. He was a millionaire. He invented the theremin, an instrument that birthed music out of thin air. His friends were Charlie Chaplin and Albert Einstein. He was the symbol of the future. But in 1938, he made a fatal mistake. He returned to the USSR. Instead of fame, the NKVD cellars awaited him. And then, the Kolyma Gulag, the millionaire of yesterday, whose hands created magical music, was now pushing a wheelbarrow of frozen soil in a labor camp. The system quickly realized that killing such a genius was wasteful. Theremin was transferred to a Sharashka, a secret prison for scientists. The order from Lavrenti Beria was brief and impossible. We need to eavesdrop on the American ambassador, but we cannot change batteries and bugs. Create something eternal. And the prisoner Theremin, for a piece of bread and a chance to survive, created a miracle. February 1945, Crimea. While Theremin toils in prison, in Yalta, Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill are dividing the world. U.S. Ambassador Avril Harriman receives an invitation to visit the Artek pioneer camp. It was a perfectly choreographed production. Imagine the scene. A sunny day. Children in snow-white shirts. A little girl with bows reads a touching poem about peace and friendship between nations. Harriman, a seasoned diplomat, relaxes. He smiles. He feels that in this moment he is seeing the true, sincere face of an ally. He trusts these children. And in this moment of maximum openness, for pioneers carry out a gift to the beat of a drum. A massive, shimmering wooden Great Seal of the United States. It is a masterpiece. Inlays of ivory palm, boxwood, and mahogany. Where should I put this? The moved ambassador asks. Stalin's personal translator, Valentin Berezkov, leans in and whispers helpful advice. Hang it in your office, sir. The British will die of envy. Of course, the seal was checked. Security services X-rayed it and swept it with mine detectors. The verdict was definitive, clean. Just wood, glue, and nails. No electronics. The seal was hung on the wall, directly above the ambassador's head. The Trojan horse had taken its place. Why did the Americans find nothing? Because they were looking for a spy with a radio. What they found was a musical instrument. To understand Theremin's genius, imagine an ordinary tuning fork. If you strike it, it begins to vibrate and produce a sound. Now imagine that you have two identical tuning forks at opposite ends of a room. You strike the first one, and the second one automatically begins to hum in response. No wires, no batteries. This is called resonance. Theremin hit a membrane and an antenna inside the seal. This was that second tuning fork. The seal hung on the wall, silent. It was a dead piece of metal. But when the KGB wanted to listen to the ambassador, they turned on a powerful microwave generator from the house across the street. This was the strike on the first tuning fork. The invisible beam hit the seal. The seal woke up and began to resonate. The ambassador's voice caused the membrane to vibrate, modulating that beam, and it flew back to the receiver. No beam, no bug. It is impossible to find. Because it works only when you are not looking for it. 7 years. From 1945 to 1952, the Soviets knew everything. For U.S. ambassadors came and went, and each of them felt like they were going insane. The leaks were catastrophic. Moscow knew the contents of secret telegrams before they were even sent. A heavy, sticky paranoia began in the embassy. Technicians stripped the plaster down to the brick. They tore up the parquet floors. They brought in the latest detectors. Silence. People broke down. Ambassador George Kennan stopped speaking in his office. He began writing instructions on paper napkins, silently showing them to assistants, and then burning them in the ashtray. His wife later recalled, he became silent even at home. He was afraid to talk to her in their bedroom, suspecting that the walls were listening. This unknown was more terrifying than any weapon. September 1952. Security technician Joseph Bezjian arrives in Moscow with one goal: find the ghost. He realizes that looking for a silent bug is useless. He needs to make it talk. A lure was needed. Ambassador Kennan agrees to play the role of bait. In the evening, he sits at his desk, directly under the wooden seal. He pulls an old folder marked Secret from the safe and begins to dictate into the void. He plays the role of a man giving away a state secret. In the next room, Bezjian puts on headphones and waits. At first, only silence. A minute passes. 2, 5. In the headphones, there is only the steady white noise of the airwaves. The KGB is waiting, checking to see if it's a trap. The tension in the room becomes physically palpable. Bezjian is almost ready to admit defeat, and suddenly, a sharp click. The noise disappears. In the headphones, the clear, loud voice of the ambassador rings out. Gotcha! Bezjian slowly enters the office. A probe is hidden in his sleeve. He follows the sound. The signal becomes deafening. He approaches the seal. The needle of the device hits the red zone. Bezjian explains nothing. He simply rips the Pioneer's gift off the wall and begins smashing its back panel with a heavy tool. The signal vanished instantly. When they saw only a hollow tube and a wire inside, the American engineers were silent for a long time. They called it the Thing, because they didn't even have a word for such technology. The irony of fate is that today, the invention of a Gulag prisoner is in the pocket of every one of you. The technology of a passive response is the foundation of RFID. Credit cards, transit passes, contactless phone payments. It all works on the principle of that very wooden seal. The terminal sends a beam of energy. The chip wakes up and responds. We use this every day, and none of the billions of people who tap their card at a terminal will ever know his name. The man who created all this died in 1993. He was 97 years old. Lev Theremin survived the camps, survived fame, and survived oblivion. At the end of his life, he returned to the conservatory to simply tune instruments. When he walked through the corridors of Moscow State University, the students didn't even suspect that this frail old man with a soldering iron had once, with one hand, created the music of the future, and with the other, forever changed the world of espionage. He died in poverty and silence. Like his invention, he only spoke to us when he was gone.